The judge read the email out loud. She said, "She leaves the 14th. Back the 24th. That is the window. I have a crew lined up." Frank Delacourt did not look up from the table. His attorney stood. He said the HOA president had acted within his administrative authority. The judge set the papers down and asked one question. She said, "Counsel, where is the board resolution authorizing this action?" There was no resolution. There had never been a vote. To understand what Frank was trying to get away with, I need to take you back 11 weeks, to the day I landed at the airport and turned my phone on. 47 unread messages. The first one was from my neighbor. She said, "I tried to stop them. I am so sorry. You need to come straight home." I had been restoring that garden for 11 years, a corner lot with a heritage designation, planted in the early 1900s, rose varieties that no longer exist in commercial cultivation. I knew every plant by name, by season, by the year it had been introduced to the property. When I left for a research trip in mid-May, the garden was at peak bloom. I turned the corner onto my street and stopped walking. Dirt, a flat dirt lot where the stone paths had been. The roses were gone. The hand-laid stonework, original to the property, broken up and removed. 10 days. He had done it in 10 days. Frank Delacourt had been president of the HOA for 9 years. For 3 of those years, he had been sending me maintenance complaint letters. Overgrowth, pest concerns, aesthetic liability to the community. That was his phrase in writing on every single notice. I had responded every time, in writing, with the heritage documentation attached. An attorney sent a cease and desist when the letters escalated. Frank never brought it to a board vote. He just kept writing, and then he waited for me to leave. Here is what he did not understand. A heritage designation is not cosmetic. Under Municipal Preservation Ordinance, alterations or removals require advance approval from a preservation board. Owner consent is required. A public review process is often required. You cannot decide something looks bad and remove it. My garden had held that designation for 11 years before I bought the property. It was listed in the Municipal Historic Register. It appeared on the county parcel records. And 2 years before he sent that crew, I had submitted a copy of the designation directly to the HOA file. Frank had it, in writing, with his name on the receipt. I photographed everything the night I came home. Then I checked my vacation footage. I had filmed the garden the morning I left, just habit, and pulled the doorbell camera history. Day 4 of my trip. Frank Delacourt, standing at the edge of my property. A crew behind him with equipment, on camera, for 11 minutes. I called my attorney that night. I said, "I have him on camera supervising the demolition." She said, "Do not post it anywhere. Do not send it to neighbors. Print it and bring it to me tomorrow. We are filing a police report first." The police report was filed as criminal mischief and destruction of property. The officer who took the report asked the value of what had been removed. I said, "Some of those roses are irreplaceable. They do not exist in cultivation anymore." She said, "We will need a documented appraisal for that." 4 days later, the HOA sent a letter claiming the board had authorized an emergency maintenance action on my property due to pest and overgrowth concerns, conducted in compliance with the governing documents. I pulled the meeting minutes. No vote. No meeting where my property was discussed. The letter was false. I said, "They are claiming board authorization that does not exist." She said, "That is obstruction. They have now submitted a false statement in a matter where a police report has been filed. Save every copy of that letter." The botanical appraisal came back at $83,000 in plant material alone. The stonework, hand-carved, original to the property, was assessed separately as irreplaceable. We filed the civil suit that week, Frank individually, the HOA as an entity. Then came discovery. We requested all HOA board communications related to my property going back 3 years. Frank's personal emails to 2 other board members were in the production. In an email sent the week before my trip, "She leaves the 14th, back the 24th. That is the window. I have a crew lined up." He had checked my travel dates. He had timed the demolition around my absence, on purpose. A second email, sent 2 days before the crew arrived. A photo of my garden taken from the street. The caption read, "Last time anyone has to look at this." I put the printed pages down and did not say anything. She said, "Are you okay?" I said, "Those roses had been alive longer than he has been alive. He photographed them and called them something to get rid of." She said, "I know, put it in the file." The emails changed the suit. We added intentional infliction of emotional distress and a claim under the state preservation statute. The Municipal Commission opened its own investigation. Under local ordinance, unauthorized demolition of a heritage property can result in mandatory restoration at the responsible party's expense. Frank hired a private attorney. The HOA insurer notified the board that coverage was under review due to the intentional nature of the act. She said, "When an insurer pulls back, it gets personal very quickly," which brings us back to that courtroom. The commission had already issued its finding before the hearing. The demolition violated the Municipal Heritage Ordinance. Frank had been notified through the HOA file. The action was not accidental. The judge read the email into the record. She leaves the 14th, back the 24th. That is the window. Frank's attorney argued the president had acted within his administrative authority. She said, "Where is the board resolution authorizing this action?" There was no resolution. The false authorization letter was entered into evidence. Frank did not testify. His attorney asked to approach at the lunch recess. Settlement discussions began that afternoon. Settlement finalized 11 weeks after I came home. Frank resigned from the board as a condition. He is personally liable for a portion of the costs, separate from the HOA settlement. The commission issued a mandatory restoration order. Rare varieties are being sourced from 3 countries. The stonework is being rebuilt by a historic masonry specialist. She said, "He thought he was removing a nuisance. He did not understand what he was touching." I said, "He had the heritage file. He understood enough." She said, "Yes, that is why you won." An HOA president does not have unilateral authority to demolish private property. When a property carries a heritage designation, that is municipal law, not something an HOA can override. And when a board member plans a demolition around the owner's absence, with premeditation in writing, that is not an administrative decision. That is a crime. If you have a heritage designation, keep your own copy, know your municipal preservation office, and respond in writing to every HOA maintenance complaint. That paper trail is the case. If your HOA has documentation about your property that you submitted years ago, designations, easements, restrictions, go check on it tonight. I gave Frank that documentation in good faith. He used it to plan around my absence. The first replacement rose arrived last Tuesday. It is planted where the original stood. Subscribe. Real cases, real law, every week.